All right. We will get going with the call here. We're just at 5 minutes past today. So hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jason Semenek, and I'm a senior marketing strategy lead here at Tegrita with a focus on sports and entertainment and content. Welcome to this quarter's League of Extraordinary Marketers for Sports Marketers. For those of you that are new to the group, welcome. I know that I'm expecting some new names in the crowd today. Thank you, Clark, for inviting more people to the call. Our goal on these calls has always been to spur conversation and the sharing of what works in the sports world. And we have teams and consultants joining us from a variety of leagues. And so we love to get questions, comments, any Q&A, and have conversations about these things. So please don't hesitate to use the Click Meeting chat function to ask questions and participate. If you'd actually like to speak to the group, please make sure to allow browser access to your microphone so that we can hear you. As I mentioned earlier, we've had trouble with this in the past. So feel free to take a moment to do that now. Lastly, I wanted to mention that you can click the Q&A icon to send questions or comments to us to share your questions with everybody. So as always, this call will include 3 portions, and that's up on your screen now. But we're going to be doing it a little bit differently this time. First, I'm going to host a discussion around preference centers during the strategy session. Then Jesse Nobbe will be taking a look at progressive profiling. And finally, we're excited to have a special guest today, Farah Yoder from the Houston Texans of the NFL, who will be sharing a recently launched birthday program with the group. So I'm excited to get Farah on the call and have her present towards the end of this call. So I just also wanted to remind everybody that we are recording this call, and we will be putting up the recordings of these calls onto our website. The website is listed on the screen right now. It's activate.tegrita.com/sports-marketing. And we'll repeat that throughout a bunch of times throughout the call so that anybody who wants to go back and review what we did, you're able to take a look at that. That's also where you can see all of our past recordings. We've been doing these calls quarterly for quite some time now. So there's a good chunk of content in there for anybody who wants to learn more about sports marketing and some of the conversations that we've had in the past. So great, we can pop over to the next slide there. I'm not going to have any slides for real this time, just some header slides. So I wanted to kick it off by starting our conversation around preference centers. So this conversation really came out of the call that we did with Clark Moray over at Oracle with the sports teams. And I realized that we had a lot more that we could discuss. And we could go a little bit deeper and start to talk about some strategy and talk about what the importance of those preference centers and how progressive profiling fits into that. And so this is an opportunity for us to go a bit deeper. And so right off the bat, I'm going to just remind people, if you've got specific questions or things that you'd like us to address, we want to have this kind of be as collaborative as possible. Use that Q&A section, and we'll be able to answer any of your questions as we go through here. So I wanted to kick it off by just reminding everybody about the importance of those preference centers. You know, it's really about giving your fans choice and control, but there is also that marketing element. It's a little bit about the data too. We've got to, as marketers, we want to try and gain as much relevant information as possible about the people who are our fans and who have signed up to receive our emails. So the goal, of course, is to grow your list and not have people completely unsubscribe. And we do that by giving your fans control over what they receive. They give them some control over that relationship. And we do this by giving them a choice of what they'd like to receive, how often, and it's an opportunity for your fans to learn about other things that they might be able to engage with. And so we're talking about minor league teams, charity work. I know a lot of teams have charities that they're associated with. If your team also owns the stadium or the arena in which you play, those people who are fans of just your team may also want to hear about those other things that you're also marketing for. And so it's an opportunity to expand your reach and customize your communications with your database so that the emails that you're sending are relevant, they're desired, and they reach people at the right frequency. From a data side of things, the information that we collect through those preference centers is super important. They help inform our marketing efforts, of course, and they help us report on critical KPIs. But the demographic information that we get from those preference centers can also help us in a lot of different ways, including an important way, which is sponsorships and partnerships. So when you're speaking with potential sponsors or partners, you can use the information that you've gathered through your preference centers to actually sell yourself, to sell your team, to sell your product. And that combined with engagement data from the emails that you're sending out is really powerful, especially for people who are considering advertising with you or your team. So preference centers are super important. And so as a little reminder of what we covered off in Clark's session 3 weeks ago now, wanted to remind you that there's really two parts to subscriptions. There's the actual preference center itself, but then there's how you send that information or how you get people from your emails to those preference centers. And so in the emails that you send, typically in the footer area, there's the subscription information. So it talks about who you're sending this email to, which type of email it is, if it's because you signed up to receive X, Y, and Z. And then there's the subscription part of it, where we give people, often give people a chance to unsubscribe or update their preferences. So from a simple view, there's the one-click unsubscribe, which is a global unsubscribe and removes people from all of your emails. There's also an unsubscribe from email groups. And this is an Oracle Eloqua term where it allows people to unsubscribe from receiving similar emails. Other marketing automation platforms will have, say, similar ways of doing this. They might not use the exact same terminology, but it's a way of people of receiving, allowing people to only receive particular types of emails. But the standard way that it's presented now really is to push people to a full preference center, rather than giving them that one click, only giving them that one click to unsubscribe option. We really want to push people to a full preference center, because at that point, maybe we can change up what we're doing with the person to better fit their needs and prevent them from completely unsubscribing. If we can save them and maybe just decrease the frequency that we're sending emails, or if we can find out even why they're leaving, this is information that we can use to fine tune our emails and our preference centers down the road. Then with the actual preference centers, and I'm speaking again in more Oracle Eloqua terms here, we have the standard marketing automation platform-based ones where you have your email groups with the descriptions. And that's kind of an out-of-the-box functionality. And again, most other marketing automation platforms will have something similar to this. But most teams, and actually most clients out there in the real world, are really moving towards what we call the custom preference centers. And this is really kind of the expectation now in 2021. And so maybe I'd like to just get some feedback from the group here. What do you use currently? Have you built a custom preference center? Maybe in the chat box right now, if everybody can just type into the chat box if they use custom or standard or basic or any other details that they want to share there. And just so that I get an idea of what people are actually using currently. Give people a second to pop into their chat screen and type some stuff out. See, a lot of people are typing right now. And of course, if anybody's willing to talk about or share their current email preference centers, that would be great. And yeah, I'd love to hear more about what you're doing and what you've seen success. All right, so David's the first one to get across the finish line. He says he uses a custom preference center where people can choose which cities they want information from, and which types of emails they'd like to receive. All right, Farah's does a custom one, and yeah, I've had a chance to take a look at the Texans one, and it's a very robust one. I think there's probably in the range of 15 to 20 different things that people can subscribe to. And interesting, David, I'd love to hear a bit more. I'm not sure where you're from, David, but what do you mean by different cities they want information from? Are you do you have lots of different teams that you're supporting, or lots of different areas? Some people who are here from the entertainment industry as well. And so this is sports and entertainment. And so a lot of the stuff that we talk about from a sports perspective spills over into the entertainment industry as well. And there's a good crossover with arenas and things like that. And so that makes sense that David, who does Broadway across America, I believe, and they do Broadway performances in a whole bunch of different cities across North America. And so giving people the option of which city they're interested in receiving information about really makes sense. That's a really smart way of allowing people to control the volume of emails. So back to the question from that we were talking about with the built-in. So the built-in versions are usually pretty basic. They maybe have a logo, a little bit of an intro, and then it's a bunch of stuff that you can't really customize and make pretty and control as much as I would like to see these things have. And so by building out a more custom one, you're able to really put the control into your marketing hands. And so you can have it exactly match the look and feel of your website. You can you include additional pictures and images. So if you've got, if you've recently won a championship or anything like that, you can display that on there. And then you can start to really customize subscribe and unsubscribe options across multiple different things and really get custom with it. And this leads into another question that I'm seeing here. What are the essential components of a preference center? This is a great question as well, and it ties into those custom preference centers, because some of the things that we like to see on the custom preference centers are things like logos, player picks, lots of white space, so it's a nice open and easy to read page. You're able to put in your own proper voice and tone. And we can start to talk about things like setting expectations around frequency and timing. And so you can say that, you know, people who sign up for our fan newsletter should expect to receive 1 email a week or 1 email a month, or whatever frequency that is. Or game day emails. You might be able to indicate that you'll only receive emails on game day. And you can even include links to samples of those emails. So if people aren't sure if they're going to like or want to receive those types of emails, that's a way to get them involved, to get them to really approve what they want to receive. And so those are a few ideas that you want to think about. Other than that, you're definitely going to want to collect, you know, first name, last name, email address, but you might also want to ask some other questions that might help with sponsorship and sales. So some demographic information. And we can customize that to be around age, for example, by saying that we're sending, you know, emails that may include sports betting, or emails that may include, you know, adult content if it's related to racing and gambling, et cetera, et cetera. And so by putting in an age question, and it doesn't need to be exact birth date, right? People might get a little bit creeped out by putting in their exact birthday, but at least even knowing the month that the year that a person was born can give you a lot of information that you can share with your sponsors.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about progressive profiling, and why not? I'll share my camera too. Hi, everybody. So I think we touched on this during Clark's user group on the last one, and I wanted to kind of follow up with it and talk about it a little bit in terms of, or in the context of preference centers. And we were kind of playing around with, you know, what are some other things that you can do with forms in general, but even with your preference centers. So I've got some things pulled up here. I'm going to share a screen. All right, so it says I'm sharing. Everybody should see my Firefox window. I've got a bunch of tabs open. I'm going to go through a few examples of different things, and then we can, sort of open it up if people want to talk about, how you want to work these into your forms or preference centers. We can do that. So the first thing I wanted to show you is just a super basic demo example, kind of proof of concept that I put together a few years ago, because I wanted to show everybody the concept, like in action, of progressive profiling. This is a custom coded solution that that I put together, and I also want to show you the same kind of solution that is built into Oracle Eloqua. So I've got a couple demos there. And actually, I was thinking while Jason was talking, I know a lot of you all use FormStack, and I don't know offhand if FormStack has progressive profiling, but if somebody wants to put in the chat there, if you have any experience with that, that would be worth going over as well. I pulled up our sandbox and was kind of poking around, but nothing jumped out at me. So I personally would be really curious to hear about that and your experience as well. But anyway, on to the demo. So progressive profiling, if you don't know, is a really easy to understand concept. The idea is that we've got, maybe 10 form fields. It doesn't, a number of form fields that we want to get answers from various different contexts, but we also don't want to overwhelm them and potentially have them bounce from the form, right? So what we do is we break that form up into bite-sized chunks, and the trade-off there is just that we're not going to get all of that information all at one time. We're going to get it over the course of several different sessions or submissions. So this page, the way I've done it is, I think I have like 5 or 6 different fields on here. And when you first load this up, it's going to check to see if it's able to figure out who you are based on your cookie. I think I coded this so you could put the email in the URL and things like that. But basically, it's going to try and see if it knows who you are and if you've already provided some of this information. So the page knows that the browser belongs to me. It pre-populates my email address, and it goes off and asks Eloqua, what do we know about the submissions for this particular form? And if it knows who I am and it's able to get some of those details, it can pre-populate the fields and things like that. So as I start submitting this, it's going to, just imagine this is kind of like one session. Now, if I go back maybe a day later, or I go to another form where we have the same kind of code integrated, it can proceed on to the next fields that, we've deemed necessary for whatever we're, trying to get at. You can do all sorts of things with this. You can randomize the fields. You can change the number of fields that it shows at one time. You can, with this solution that I built, we thought it was important to have like an expiration date. So 6 months down the road, it can start asking you or showing you these same fields again. So if I go through this a few times, the nice thing about this is that once I've kind of gone through all of the fields, it's not going to ask me anymore. And now I'm just going to zoom through and get to the content that I'm looking for. Like maybe you're using this to gate some content or something like that. And so with that timeout, then, 6 months down the road, maybe some of those details changed. You can freshen up the values in your database based on that, and not bother your contacts with those questions over and over in the meantime. So, all that to say that it's totally doable. You know, if in your particular platform you don't have this as an option, this is just JavaScript. You know, it's wasn't super difficult for me to figure out how to do it and code it and those sorts of things. So it's totally doable in those systems where you may not have it as a built-in function. But I did want to go over a little bit how Oracle does it. So let's jump over to the responsive form editor. And I actually did sort of a double whammy with this example. So I know we also, on that last call with Clark, we talked about doing a two-step form. So this is both progressive profiling and it's two-step. So this is step one of our form. And I put progressive profiling on both of them. But that's sort of like the nice thing about this is it's just another ingredient. You can use it or you don't have to use it. It's up to you. But the way that they do it here in Eloqua is it's another form element that you just drag out onto this main canvas area, and then you can start populating it with fields. So we've got this kind of like blue outline here. If I click on that, once this is in place, then I can play around with some of the settings for how the fields are going to be expressed. So in this particular form, I chose the staged type. There's two types. With staged, the other options are grayed out. You can't use them. So this is just going to break it up into whatever chunks you dragged your fields into in terms of the different stages. And so as the context submits this over and over, they'll get transitioned through those different stages. Whereas the list gives you these other options in terms of the randomization and whether or not it's going to show you already populated fields and how many is it going to show at one time, that sort of thing. So let's just go through a submission. And I just, don't pay too much attention to the actual fields I put in there. This is our sandbox. I just put some fields in so that you could get a feel for it. And we'll submit. And so now this is where we're getting into the the two-step, multi-step form, whatever you want to call it. You don't have to redirect to a thank you page or back to your website. You can certainly redirect to another form, right? So this fits in, I think, pretty well with the idea of, especially with the preference center, you want to focus on preferences, right? And you may not want to overwhelm your contacts with an intro section with a lot of questions around their particular details. So you can focus on that core objective of getting preferences from people and follow up here with maybe this, as a good venue for your progressive profiling to say, we've got one or two other things we just wanted to ask you really quickly for your opinion on, and then move on from there. So I think that increases the likelihood of getting this information from people. And so again, it's just some random fields I picked to go in here, but I did do this as progressive profiling too. So once I submit this, you may redirect to your website from here or more specific thank you page. But if I back up all the way to the beginning, I've got a different field here because I did progressive profiling here as well. And let's just fill that out. We'll go back to here, and so you can see I've got some different fields here. Another quick thing I wanted to point out is I've configured this in such a way that I'm not asking them for their email address again either. So what I did, because we still need to collect that for the form submission, I just added email address as a hidden field here. And since we're redirecting from a form in Eloqua, we still know who this person is on this page. So we don't have to ask them for their email again. We don't have to show it to them or anything. So that might, clean it up a little bit, keep it more simplified, and also help with that conversion. So we'll just fill that out. And then I guess one last thing, I wanted to say about this, if I go back here again, yeah, with the Oracle solution, you'll see, at least with the staged option, this field is going to continue to show if somebody comes back here. And the other thing with progressive profiling I want to call out, especially in 2021, is with cookies. So I know the code that I wrote and the Oracle solution both use cookies to, sort of make this whole thing work. And your mileage may vary depending on your visitors and their browser configuration and that sort of thing. So, worst case scenario, somebody's going to see all the form fields. But in the best case scenario, they're going to get this improved experience of going through, the multiple stages of progressive profiling. And I can also show you guys sort of some more of the behind the scenes here. So on this form, if I go to the processing, what I'm doing here in the redirect is I'm just redirecting to another landing page internally in Eloqua. And this is the kind of the key aspect with that hidden field. This is how we're able to retain the knowledge of who submitted the form on the next page. So if I were to send to an external URL, we would lose that that knowledge and understanding. So that's just a kind of little tip if you wanted to try this out. The little trade-off there is that you won't get a pretty URL in your browser when you go from one page to the other. So if you look up here, you can see it says LP equals 380. It'll look like that in the browser for that person, but I don't think too many people are paying too close attention to that sort of thing.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. I think I've got my audio back.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hey, all right. That's great news. We were talking just before the call. I've switched over to Starlink satellite, so supporting SpaceX, and I must have lost a satellite in between there. So, all right, great stuff, Jesse. Thanks for sharing all of that. I wanted to open it up and see if anybody had any questions about progressive profiling. As Jesse said, this allows you to ask deeper questions of your database without cluttering up your preference center. In general, the goal of the preference center is to get people to submit. And as we know, the more fields that a person has to fill out, the more friction there is on that page, the less likelihood that a person is actually going to complete that page. Because if it's too many steps, people are going to get bored, they're going to get distracted, they're going to get frustrated. And so this is a way for you to ask a second step, and the way for you to get more information that you can then share for other purposes. And Jesse, you did touch on the cookies side of things there, and how that's you're going to be dependent on JavaScript and cookies to make some of these things happen. Did you want to talk about first-party cookies versus third-party cookies and whether that might affect some of the stuff?
Sure. So, there's two main kinds of cookies that we tend to talk about in this world. There's third-party cookies and first-party, and really they are exactly as they sound, right? So third-party cookies are little snippets of information that another URL that's interacting with the web page that you're on stores about you. So in the case of Eloqua, it's going to be a custom ID that identifies you, right? The same thing goes with first-party cookies, but the difference is that those cookies are hosted on the same URL that you're on. And the reason that these things exist is they help with, things like personalizing a web page or helping you store the items in your cart if you're on an e-commerce site, staying logged into a website if you're going from page to page. And so over the last, I don't know, 5+ years, the landscape around what's appropriate to do with cookies has been changing. And so, Apple's really kind of leading the charge with that sort of thing, and they're dragging other browser vendors along for the ride, kicking and screaming. But Firefox, I saw just the other day they're releasing some more specific um, changes to their browser around cookies. Google is starting to roll out a lot of these sort of like privacy-oriented changes as well. And what that means for us as marketers is that we might lose out on some of these personalization features in our platforms that are built around cookies. And there's pros and cons to that, obviously, but I think it's really important that we're aware of that, and that you might put a lot of effort into building this really custom, highly personalized experience, and then someone has an add-on in their browser that prevents them from appreciating all that hard work. So I think that, to me, in this day and age, you need to sort of plan around that and understand, what's the default experience going to be like for people as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and maybe people can pitch in on the chat. I'm more curious than anything else. Do you know if you're using first party or third party cookies right now? So if people have a response to that, that'd be great. So I will try and pick up where we left off before my satellite got lost. And I wanted to jump back into the preference center side of things, and wanted to talk about um, some strategic considerations and some things that with preference centers that you might want to think about. And so one of the things that I talked about with Clark's group previously was offering alternatives to unsubscribe. And so we talked about frequency management, allowing people to specify the maximum number of emails they'd like to receive. And the other thing that you can do with that is allow people to snooze their emails. And so, people in Texas who are being hammered by the weather, they may not be a good time for them to be receiving marketing emails. And so maybe they, rather than them just unsubscribing, they might want to snooze their emails for 30 days. You know what? I've got broken pipes. I've got stuff I need to deal with. I don't want to hear about any of my teams right now. That'll just distract me from the renovations that I have to do. So I'm going to snooze my emails for 30 days and then pick back up. Because the alternative is that they may just unsubscribe completely. And we don't want that to happen. And so giving people options and alternatives as opposed to unsubscribing. But if people do still follow through with the unsubscribe, they signed up for your emails for some reason in the first place, and so it's not necessarily that they dislike you or they're mad at you, but you can find out why they left. And so for people that do unsubscribe, I'm seeing this more and more often. It pops up an exit survey. So people who have unsubscribed, we say, can you let us know why you're unsubscribing? And you give options like too many emails, no longer relevant, moved out of the area, changed email address, and even give people an option to give another reason. So, a text box that allows them to explain why they've left your program. That information is really valuable to us as marketers. If you get a whole bunch, if you change your marketing strategy and you get a whole bunch of unsubscribes because of too many emails, this is your opportunity to adjust your strategy on the fly and be agile about it. If all of a sudden, people are having problems with their images loading, it could identify a problem with your emails and you need to fix something technical in the background. If the emails are ending up in spam all the time and people flag that and they just miss those emails and so they're unsubscribing, that's another thing that would trigger you to take a look at the technical side of things. Um, we talked already about some progressive profiling ideas, but as something that happens after people submit the form. But another thing that you can do and want to think about after people submit the form to your preference center is, what do you do with them now? And you can't treat everybody the same. If it's a brand new person to your database, this is an opportunity to include them in a welcome program, a welcome campaign, where you're introducing different facets of the organization and making sure that they stay engaged, sharing social channels and making sure that they get engaged across social media, et cetera, et cetera. If they're an existing person who has recompleted the preference center form for some reason, they don't need to get that welcome series again. They've been around for a while and they know. But you may want to put them into another type of program. So for example, a nurture program, or even a birthday program, which we're going to get to shortly and have Farah share her program with us. And so what, you might be asking yourself, why would we want to drive people back to that preference center? Why would we want them to complete the preference center information again? And this really leads to compliance. Compliance is becoming a bigger and bigger issue around the world. So if you're dealing with people who might be in the EU or in Canada or California, all of those areas have much more stringent compliance requirements than you might see in the rest of the US. And so we're seeing more and more teams start to implement a full compliance program where we get people to confirm their subscriptions. We do double opt-ins. We get explicit versus implicit consent to be emailing them. And maybe that's actually a good question. And so maybe I'll put that out to the group here. Do you use a compliance program right now, or is it kind of like just a preference center and that once they subscribe, that's good enough? I'm really curious if there's any teams that are using compliance and going through a double opt-in process. Yeah, so if you can just use the chat section there to provide your feedback on that, that'd be great. But some things that you might want to think about for getting to drive people back to your preference center. So let's say you've made some updates. You've taken some of the strategic stuff we've spoken about here, and you've updated your preference center, and you want people to now start filling out those new forms. So you want to come up with some innovative ways to start driving people back to that preference center. So a few ideas that I've come across that I really like. Doing a social crossover. And so run a social campaign on your free social media platforms to drive email signups. Get people pushing to those preference centers from social properties. And then you might catch some new people who are only engaging with you on social might not even know that you've got newsletters. And so getting them over to your preference center is a great way of doing that. And another good one is to put up some high quality gated content. So if you've got a special video from a player or a coach, or some special fun thing that they did, if they did a challenge or things like that, you can gate that content behind a version of your preference center or just a simple form that, as a second step, pushes over to the preference center. And so that's another good way of getting people over to your preference center. Does anybody else have any other ideas that they'd like to share about preference centers or compliance, or even preference center strategy before we wrap up this section? Go ahead and use the chat section or the Q&A section there. Or if anybody wants to actually speak to the rest of the group, just let me know in chat, and we'll make sure that you can get your thoughts out to the rest of the teams. All right, we'll move on, and in the meantime, if you want to ask your questions, we'll have some time after Farah does her presentation. Contacts have to fill out the preference center page. This is a good question. So quite often we get lists from sales teams, from events, and things like that. And so, there are ways for people to get into your database without filling out the preference center. But as a best practice, and especially in this world of increased compliance, best practice would say that the first email that you send to people, if they didn't come in through a preference center, would be to encourage them to come to your preference center and customize what they'd like to receive. So I would say that it's not, a legal requirement to have people fill out the preference center, but it is definitely a best practice. And so in most cases, I would say that yes, you would want people to fill out the preference center as much as possible. This question might also actually be related to single field signups. So I've seen this on a lot of websites where it's just enter your email address to join our mailing list. And so that's an opportunity. It's much less friction for people to fill out a single field and enter their email address. But what I would suggest is, rather than just saying thank you or you are subscribed, that after you have that person fill out the single field subscription, you push them to that preference center so that you get more information and get a proper subscription from them. So yeah, thanks for that question as well. All right, so I'm now going to jump over to our MarTech demonstration. And so I'm happy to introduce Farah Yoder, the Director of CRM Data with the Houston Texans of the NFL. Farah is here to share her new program that her team recently launched, which is the birthday program. So Farah, are you there? Just want to make sure we can hear you. Hello, hello.
Turn on my video.
There we go. There you are. Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Farah. I'll turn it over to you and let you run through and show us what you've done.
Okay, thank you. So at the Texans, Tegra is our partner. We leverage Eloqua, and we have a birthday program that's set up for our kids club that basically is 3 parts. So it's their annual birthday, and then since they're little kids, they're like, oh, it's my half birthday, so we've got a half birthday program. And then on their 13th birthday, we basically age them out and we send a survey. We had some challenges around this. Jesse actually helped build out this program for us. We've tested it. It runs great. Some of the challenges that we had to overcome are basically, I'm coming into my 12th season, and we've had with the Texans, and we've had probably 3 or 4 different ways of collecting kids club memberships, if you will, because of COPPA and legacy systems and things like that. So, it was alluded to that people kind of get a little weirded out about, if they have to put in their full birthday. And we felt that as an organization as well. So at one point in time, we were only collecting month and year. Now we collect the full birth date. So our program actually launches on the 1st of every month. And depending on what bucket you fall in, you will get one of those 3 emails. So we had to do a little bit of data conversion to get everything kind of loaded up when we moved to the Eloqua platform last summer, so that we could facilitate this program. I'm just going to kind of jump in and show you how we've set it up. Does everybody kind of understand? I'm assuming what I'm talking about here in terms of the 3 different emails and some of the challenges. If you have questions, please put it in the chat. Let's see, how do I share? Okay, so I'm going to jump in here. So how we basically enter these people in, and you'll see our preference center. You can come in a couple of different ways. We have a fan zone page here where you can sign up for the Stampede, Battle Red Ladies, all of our different fan clubs. And we've got Toro's Kids Club. You can come in and hit register, and it takes them to the preference center. You can also go to the preference center through the homepage at the bottom where it's email subscription preferences. So you come in here, all of this stuff will obviously be pre-populated if we know who you are. And then these are all he was talking about. We do have extensive preferences. We try to be really good about adhering to what people want. So let's kind of look at all of this stuff with you guys since we were on that topic of how we do it. Come in here, all that good stuff. So we come down to fan clubs, and we have certain things that if somebody's not wanting to sign up for a fan club, that's fine. We still need to be able to submit the preference center to be able to do that. So we've got some stuff, logic built in here that's, it's going to go ahead and submit even if you're not adding a child. You come in here, say, yeah, you can just, add a kid. And then you can choose the date. And you can add up to 4 children. We looked at our past, fan base signups to try to figure out, the general average so that we wouldn't force people to have to, sign up more than once to be able to add children. That was some of our challenges that we had in previous platforms. You had to go and fill it out every single time you wanted to add a child. This eliminates that need here. If you have more than 4 children, yes, you're going to have to go back and fill this back out. So you come in here and you hit submit. By the way, while we're on the topic of the preference center, if you want to sign up for our Battle Red Ladies, we have required information. If somebody signs up for that, that'll be populated in here. So right now, I'm just going to hit unsubscribe, and then you can hit submit. And there's our generic thank you page. So what happens is the information flows into Eloqua. It's stored in a custom data object. We don't stamp it on the contact. We debated and went back and forth on how to really best facilitate that. There would be some easier things if you chose to stamp it on your contact. But the reason why we decided to create it in a custom data object is because we didn't want to limit the families that have more than a certain number of children. Families come in all shapes and sizes. So if you've got, 8 kids, which I understand is pretty unusual in modern times, you can do that without us having to clutter our contact entity with fields that may or may not ever be used. So that's why we made that decision is the custom data object. It's just all stored right there. So what we have here's basically the nuts and bolts of the program itself. It's made up of several different moving parts. So you've got your segment, we've got the campaign that goes in and basically puts them down the path for annual birthdays, half birthdays, and aged out birthdays. And then we have a program that feeds all of this and goes and does all of the checking. So everybody still with me? Can I get make sure everybody can see this?
Looks great. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yep, so far so good.
Okay, great. All right, so here's basically I've got an evergreen, segment that's set up here. It's very simplistic. It goes in, it says, okay, do they have a record in the custom preference or from the custom preference center for Taurus Kids Club in the custom data object? And then of course we have these things always built out in every segment that we ever build, since it's an email campaign, making sure we don't have any hard bounces, soft bounces, and then people that opted out of all Texans emails. Our solution is a little different because we run 2 separate corporations out of a singular platform. So we have Lone Star Sports and Entertainment where we host like bowl games and international soccer matches, and we've got the Texans. So the global subscribe that you would traditionally pick from over here doesn't apply to us because we don't leverage that. We've got some custom programming and things that manage that for us. So basically, this just stays put. We don't ever have to touch it. It's just there. Set it and forget it. This is the feeder that we've got sitting out here that I've talked about, right? So this is the segment. It basically comes in and listens. It looks at it once a day. Make sure that you launch this at a particular time of day. So because whenever it says once a day, it's going to be 24 hours from the time that you activate it. That's something that I learned the hard way when testing. And then it feeds it into a program that basically looks at custom data objects and says, okay, is it the same month that we're in right now? Is it the first? All of that good stuff. And I'll jump into that in a minute. So once it does that, it comes over here, and this is where it pushes it. This step puts it here. This is a little overwhelming when you first take a look at it. Jesse's done a great job for us. This is clearly huge, right? But there's 12 months and 3 different types of emails that go out. So I'll just kind of show you what this is doing. So the first thing that it comes in here and it does is, okay, well, let's set the current date, right? And then it comes in and it looks at various entities, you know, is it, we've got some anomalies that we found that if the way the date pattern is put into place, there's like a space, and Jesse, you can kind of go into that if you want about how you have to clean that up. I don't know if anybody's.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to put anybody to sleep. All I'll say is that there are a lot of little kind of particular things that we had to do with handling the dates. But the big insight for me was actually storing the date as text instead of a date. And then with some of the other tools that Eloqua gives us in terms of doing these decisions, because it's text and because I can use like regular expressions and things like that, or I guess wildcards in this case, not regular expressions, I'm able to kind of filter people and send people down the right path, you know. So basically, if you have a birthday in February, we can figure that out and get you into the right campaign.
Yep, that's exactly right. And that's basically what these different areas are looking at, right? Is it January? You know, is it today? Where are you? It calculates it and says, okay, if it's January, you come down over here. Are you aged out? If you're aged out, it sends you to, you know, we've got the different emails here, right? We've got the aged out email, we've got the annual email, and then we've got the half birthday email. So, you know, is it January? Yes. You know, what is your age? Are you 13? Then you go here. If you're not, you go here. Is it July? You know, all that good stuff. And then it puts it here. So this is, you know, January and July. This is February and August. So all of these are effectively doing the exact same thing. So once you kind of understand how it's written out, it's not that overwhelming. So let's jump in. So, right. So it's putting them into these 3 different campaigns. So I'm going to jump back here. That's this campaign here. So, or this program here. So if it says, yeah, it's an annual birthday, then move it to the annual, you know, move it to the annual birthday campaign. If it's, you know, aged out, move it to the aged out campaign. If it's half, and then once all of that's done, I have a program that goes in and cleans that stuff up. And these are the programs for those. These are the campaigns that are very simple. This is your annual campaign, right? It's entering, it looks every hour, it sends the email, it's done. Half birthday, same deal, right? Very straightforward. And then on the aged out email, it does the exact same thing with one exception. We want to make sure that we track the information from the exit survey, and that once it gets done, we sit here and we wait for a couple weeks before we push them into the aged out deletion step, because we want people to be able to have the time to fill this information out. If they haven't filled it out in 2 weeks, they're not going to fill it out. So you might as well just get rid of that. We're getting rid of the custom data object record. We're not getting rid of the record that that's tied to the contact. And then over here is what the emails actually look like. So this is the aged out birthday email. They're all very similar. You can come in here. You've got the little Toro. Oh, thank you. Take the survey. It's very straightforward. And this, you know, this is our footer. We use the combo process for our opt-in and out, right? We take it to the subscription center page, and then for unsubscribing from similar communications there. This is our half birthday. So they get a free milkshake from Fuddruckers. But what we also do with our birthday program is we feature the players that have a birthday in the same, you know, if it's a player's half birthday, then we'll feature them here, and you can click through. And then you can see all of their stats. So the kid can kind of start to relate to the players. And then we also feature our Toro's Kids Club Member of the Month. That's what this is. And then you can nominate who that is. So we try to promote this in our newsletters, but we also promote it in our birthday emails. And then this is our regular, this is your annual birthday. It's a different offer. So that was important to us to make sure, you know, you're getting a free hamburger versus a free milkshake. You get something free, or a free kids meal for your annual birthday, you're getting a little more than just for your half birthday here. And then the same thing, we follow through with the different links. The nice part about this particular program is because before we had it, we would have to build 3 different emails, 3 different segments every single month, and 3 different campaigns to launch. So now what this has allowed us to do is a little bit of work up front. Is all we have to do is go into the email builder and swap out the elements. So, which I think I can show you. So these are the 3 emails. So we don't do a save as. We don't keep recreating these emails over and over. Our marketing person can just come in and say, okay, well, this month it's going to be a different kind of an offer, or this actually usually stays pretty good if it's sponsored, pretty steady for the year. And then they just swap out these 2 players and the member of the month. And it takes them just a few minutes, and then they just hit save, and that's it. So it's a lot less work for all parties involved.
That's amazing. Thank you, Farah. That's great work, and I know Jesse enjoyed working on that program with you. It's super complex, but simple in the way that it ends up working in the end. A lot of work to get it to this point, but really easy for the end user now. You have just a few elements to update each month, and you're set. It just runs automatically in the background, as we like to say.
Yep. The other nice part about doing it this way that we find is we can get metrics on, the effectiveness of our campaign for one single campaign. We don't, or for one single campaign for each email type. So yeah, traditionally, otherwise what we'd have to do is we'd have to look and be like, well, how did January do? How did February do? How did March do? And marry all of that together. And we find, because we've done it that way for years, we find that it doesn't matter what month, what kind of birthday, or if you're aging out. We understand that the engagement metrics are pretty much the same. So now instead of saying, okay, we've got to look at 12 different campaigns for the annual and 12 different campaign effectiveness for the half birthday and 12 different campaigns for the aged out. Now we've got 3 campaigns we can just look at, and the thing just continuously runs. And as long as we keep a pulse on it, we should be able to see if it's trending up or down.
Yeah, that's great. That really simplifies reporting in the long run there.
Very much.
And your ability to be agile with those results.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
I just Stephanie just asked a question, I think just directly related to what you were saying, Farah, but I published it here if we want to pull it up. I just wanted to add that you could still do different campaigns with this if you wanted to. You could just go in and swap out the campaign every month instead of changing the email in the campaign.
That's an option, yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, to answer Stephanie's question here, are there any drawbacks to using the same email versus creating a new one each month? The big benefit that you're going to see here of using the same email is that you don't have to touch the campaign at this point. If you're just changing the email, the campaign will keep reusing that same email. And so you don't have to pause the campaign, delete the old email, put in the new email, and then reactivate the campaign. So you're saving yourself a whole bunch of steps by reusing and just editing the same email over and over. And as Farah mentioned, it also saves you time on reporting. If you're doing reporting by email as opposed to reporting by campaign, you're going to get better reporting from that perspective as well.
The one thing that I would mention that you would want to think about, because I said, hey, we've been doing this for years, and we know that the engagement is the same month over month. It's been consistent for years. I mean, I can tell you, I think it's like a 40% open rate. The redemption rate's about 1-2%. I mean, this is just steady Eddie. If you don't know what those performance metrics are up front from like a benchmark standpoint, You may want to create different emails and different campaigns and swap those things in and out. And this program certainly facilitates that. You just have to do it, because then you would be able to create that benchmark and say, okay, did the Fuddruckers free meal perform better than, the free shake? Or, you could start looking at that from a content standpoint, if you and stand them and stack them up against each other. Unless you create different emails, you're not going to be able to do that. So if you don't understand what that engagement is consistently, I would suggest creating new emails and creating new campaigns, or new emails and one campaign, because you can always drill into the emails in Eloqua and see what that engagement is, even though they're belonging to the same campaign. So you could have a hybrid, if that makes sense. And Eloqua anyway. I know that some of you may not use Eloqua, but that's how you could do it here.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You're because you've got such a mature organization and you've been doing this for so long, you already have that baseline data and know what to expect. For teams that haven't been doing this in the past, you're right. You may want to get some baseline data for the first year and then be able to start improving upon that in the second year. So yeah, that's an excellent point there.
And I actually just wanted to add, if you are using Eloqua and you wanted to do something like this and you decide to kind of go with the same campaign, same email, especially if you plan on just letting it run year after year, be sure to set the end date of the campaign way into the future, allow re-entries into the campaign, and allow the email to be sent again. Because, if you don't do that from the beginning, you're going to run into problems 2 years hence.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And we ran into that issue because I was like, wait, when I was testing, I tested this program over the course of about 4 months with my own dummy data, because we did not want to accidentally email people the wrong thing. And that happened to us. We set the end date for the campaign, December 31st, 2020. And so I was like, wait, why didn't I get my January? So, but my aged out one was set way in the future. So I got that. So it's just those little things and tweaks and troubleshooting. That's why it's a good idea to test this thing for a few months.
All right, Clark has a question, and I guess this might be a question for both Farah and Jesse. But yeah, he's asking, how much time did this take up front versus the amount of time you're now saving each month?
I'll let Jesse, because he built it and then I tested. So Jesse, I can't remember how many hours it took you to build it.
Well, yeah, I guess you guys had some unique requirements for this. Sending on the first day of the month and having the 3 different campaigns. For me, were really interesting challenges. And we spent some time, kind of figuring out the details of, especially around working with the dates to, be able to send people down the right channels into the right campaign, that sort of thing. But once we got all those little eccentricities ironed out, it was pretty straightforward. And I would say, if anybody else wanted to do this in the same way or very similar way, well, those are all those problems are solved. So, it probably wouldn't be as difficult to reproduce this at this point. But yeah, I mean, like you were saying, Farah, we worked on it over the course of a few months here and there to iron out some of those details.
And now, Farah, how much time would you say you're saving?
Yeah, I mean, I think that so that's kind of a twofold question, how I look at that. It saves us probably each month an hour and a half, versus it literally takes us about 3 or 4 minutes to change the email. The other flip side to that's the time saver from my perspective, is now we've handed this to an intern, our annual marketing intern. She's the one that goes in and just swaps out the assets and the emails. now I don't have to train her on, okay, here's your email and here's your segment and go look for it here and like launch your campaign and make sure it's named a certain way. All of those different pieces are a non-issue now. And when a new intern rolls in or somebody has to cover for her, it takes 2 seconds and you don't have to have a depth of knowledge of Eloqua to get the thing going. So there's a time saving from that perspective as well. I mean, I don't know why. I've wanted to automate this thing for years in our old platform and we just couldn't get her done. So I'm pretty excited to have this. And so is the rest of the marketing team's excited. Everybody's pretty excited about it. So the other nice thing is we can take this birthday program, and we don't have a formal birthday program with our season ticket members or PSL owners, or, we've talked about now that we have this, formalizing something for them, and we can literally take this thing, copy it, and move it to any other birthday program we may choose to have.
Yeah, great point. And so I know that, in terms of budgeting for something like this is something that can, if you've got budget available at the end of the year that you need to use up before the start of the next budget cycle, this is an excellent thing to consider. The fact that it's freeing up your more experienced staff members to focus on the stuff that they are actually hired to do, rather than the simple stuff of updating emails, and you can pass it on to your intern. That's a super valuable thing to have. It keeps your team focused and on the right things, and allows your interns to do something that is a real feel-good type of project. Like, who doesn't like wishing kids happy birthday, right? And so it's a great way for to get your interns doing something that's fun as well. And so, yeah, I think this is great. I really appreciate you coming on to the call today, Farah. And I'll let everybody who's on the call know that if you have more questions, please let us know. We'd love to, consider some of these things down the road in the future and doing more types of demos like this down the road. And so, I wanted to just make sure that if you've got questions that you haven't had a chance to answer, if you're ruminating over this, feel free to email us. You can contact either myself or Jesse, and we can get you answers on all of these things. And also watch for the recording of this. If you want to review again what happened during this call, we'll have the recording of the call up on our activate.tegrita.com/sports-marketing page. And so I'm going to wrap up the call for today. I wanted to thank Farah Yoder and the Texans again for sharing with the group today. That was really, really valuable. If anyone else would like to feature an innovative program on our next call, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. And watch for emails coming to you in a few months with details on the next sports user group, which will take place in May. And again, be sure to reach out to Clark to learn more about his sports groups as well. All right. Thank you, everybody, again, for your participation today. We look forward to seeing you next time.